Loneliness increasing your risk of premature death by 26% is not a metaphor. It's a biological reality. And the full picture is more interesting than the headline. There's a stat that constantly gets shared in public health circles. Loneliness is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You've probably seen it. It gets cited by doctors, public health officials, shared on social media, and repeated so often that it's basically become common knowledge at this point. And the underlying research that produced it is real. Studies consistently show that social isolation raises stroke risk by 32%, heart disease risk by 29%, and overall premature death risk by 26%. These aren't small numbers. Those are numbers that should genuinely change how seriously we treat social connection as a health variable. But I want to do something a little different with this topic today. I want to present the evidence, and then I also want to challenge some of it. Not to dismiss the research, because it's important, but because thinking carefully about what we actually know and what we don't know is how you make sense of it and do something useful with it. So let's get into it. The comparison from smoking comes from a meta-analysis by a researcher named Julianne Holt-Lundstad. She looked at data across dozens of studies and found that people with adequate social connection had a 50% greater likelihood of survival compared to those who were socially isolated. The cigarette comparison was her way of putting the magnitude of that risk into terms that people could relate to, and it worked. It spread everywhere. But here's where the story gets more complicated. When researchers went back and directly compared loneliness and smoking in the same populations using the same data sets, what they found was that cigarette smoking was actually more strongly associated with mortality than loneliness or social isolation across most outcomes. The direct head-to-head comparison didn't hold up the way the headline suggested. So, what does that mean? It doesn't mean loneliness is a real health risk. It clearly is. What it means is that the specific comparison to 15 cigarettes a day may overstate the equivalence. And public health researchers have actually called this out, arguing that the analogy, while useful for raising awareness, oversimplifies the evidence and puts too much focus on individual behavior without enough attention on the social and structural conditions that create isolation in the first place. That's an important distinction, and we'll come back to it. So, why does loneliness affect health at all? What's the mechanism? When you're lonely, your body treats it as a threat. We're biologically wired for social connection, and the absence of it triggers the same stress response that any perceived danger does. Cortisol rises. Your nervous system stays in a low-grade activated state. And if that persists over months and years, which is exactly what chronic loneliness is, you get all of the downstream effects of chronic stress: elevated blood pressure, chronic inflammation, disrupted blood sugar regulation, impaired immune function. These are the same mechanisms that drive heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and several other chronic conditions. The biology isn't mysterious. Your body's responding to a threat it wasn't designed to handle indefinitely. On the flip side, strong social connection appears to buffer against all of that. Researchers at Stanford found that having strong and secure relationships is associated with roughly 50% greater longevity. Married people tend to be healthier and live longer on average than those who are single, divorced, or widowed. Though here's an important nuance in that one. Unhappy marriages don't show the same protective effect. It's the quality of the relationship that drives the health benefit, not the marital status itself. So the quality of your social connections matters enormously. A few genuinely close relationships appear to deliver most of the health benefit. A large number of shallow or toxic ones don't. Now here's a question worth sitting with. Does loneliness cause poor health, or does poor health cause loneliness? Because you could argue it both ways. Someone who develops a serious chronic illness loses mobility. Their world gets smaller, the social participation drops, and they end up isolated. The health problem came first, and the isolation followed. But you can also make the biological case in the other direction, which is that loneliness activates chronic stress responses that drive disease over time. The isolation came first, and the health decline followed. The honest answer is that the research suggests both directions are real. It runs in a loop. And researchers actually describe social relationships as a double-edged phenomenon. Social support favors longevity, but social strain, difficult, toxic, or high conflict relationships is associated with worse health outcomes. So again, it comes back to quality. More connection is not automatically better. Better connection is better. I think it's worth naming this uncertainty rather than pretending it doesn't exist, because I think people can tell when they are being given a cleaner story than the evidence actually supports. And when that happens, they stop trusting the information. Something I noticed in my own life, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, is that the social circle naturally contracts after high school ends or after school ends. In high school and college, you're just constantly around people. Proximity creates friendships without you having to try that hard. You're thrown into the same rooms with the same people every day, and relationships just form. Then that structure disappears. Work fills most of your time. You're building a career, maybe a family, managing your finances, trying to take care of your health. The unstructured time that friendships need to grow just gets smaller. People drift. You stop meeting new people in these natural, organic settings. And before long, the social life that used to feel easy requires intentional effort that nobody told you to start making. And I think that's especially true for men. There tends to be less social infrastructure for adult male relationships, fewer people checking in, fewer environments that naturally create connection. It's just something worth naming. I go deeper on this every 5 days. The full post is at evolutionofwellness.com. The link is in the description. Here's the part that I think gets skipped over in most conversations about loneliness, and I think it's actually the most important thing. The city you choose to live in, the job you take, the routines you build, the environments you spend your time in, all of it either creates the conditions for connection or works against it. That's a decision you are making whether you realize it or not. Living somewhere that doesn't reflect your values is a chronic low-grade stressor. It affects who you spend time with, whether those interactions feel meaningful, and whether the life you are actually building is actually moving towards something. Conversely, living somewhere that aligns with who you are and puts you around people who share your values and your goals changes almost everything downstream. Is changing environment easy? No. It takes real resources, real planning, and sometimes real sacrifice. But I think people underestimate how much of a legitimate health decision it actually is. It's not just about lifestyle preference. Where you live shapes your stress levels, your social opportunities, your physical activity, your access to good food, and the quality of your daily life. That is public health. Short of a full move, the same principle applies at a smaller scale. Choose environments that put you around the same people consistently. A gym, a class, a community organization. Relationships form through repeated proximity over time, not through scheduling meaningful conversations. Find shared purpose with people. Work towards something together. That's one of the fastest ways to build genuine connections as an adult. And be honest about trade offs. Time is finite. Going to the gym after work instead of getting drinks isn't antisocial, it's a priority call. But be deliberate about where the remaining social energy actually goes. Because the default in modern adult life, if you are not intentional, tends towards isolation even when that was never what you wanted. Connection is not a luxury. For a lot of people, it is one of the most neglected variables in their entire health picture. Build a life where it is actually possible. If this was useful, subscribe for more. I post new videos every week. The full breakdown on this topic is on my blog at evolutionofwellness.com and on Substack. Both links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.